Welcome into episode 474 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, the calendar has officially flipped to September, which means hockey season begins this month with training camp later on, and it's already technically unofficially began with captain's practices.
Oh, it's so here. I'm so back.
Indeed, yeah. Tuesday was day one of captain's practices, so a lot of guys have been in for the last few days or the last week. Some guys spent the entire summer in Boston, or at least like 90% of it. So, yeah, it was a good turnout. I think we were counting and got up to 26, 27 players who were there. I tweeted out, Bridget and I think both tweeted out lists of everyone we could track. There were a couple players with no numbers on their helmets. No one had a number on their jerseys, so some of it was a little hard to track. But people can go check out those lists. I don't think we're going to go through the entire roster of who is there, but we'll definitely mention some notable ones. Yeah, they got the new logo down on the ice over at Warrior. New logo on the outside of the building. I saw the Bruins posted on social media the video of that like last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever they did it, changing out the logo. I did notice they still have the old logo on the roof of the locker room, so they're gonna have to update that at some point. Little behind the scenes there for you, but yeah, no, it's exciting. It's exciting to be back over a Warrior.
Yeah, I was there too. Unfortunately, it's closed off. Captain's practice is closed off to the public. Once regular practices and preseason practices start, I believe it's open back up so people can go see that kind of stuff themselves if they're interested and if they just want to be around a rink again, because it's been a long time for a lot of people. Yeah, I definitely want to get into who was there and who notably wasn't there. There was questions coming into the captain's practice week about if Pastrnak was going to be there. Scott, I believe that's part of your opening shift.
Yeah, if we want, we can just go right into it. Yeah, because I had mentioned on a podcast, we had gotten a mailbag question about Pastrnak not being in Boston for the summer, and I think we were all in agreement that that's not a big deal. Like, he goes home to Europe for the summer, spends time in both Czech Republic and Sweden. He skates with a good group. He was saying that the group he skated with in Sweden was like pretty much the entire Swedish national team. So like he's getting good ice time. He's with some good players. So I was never worried about that. But I did say at the time that, you know, Pastrnak is generally a player who, like a lot of Europeans, comes back a little bit later into captain's practice. Like if they have 2 weeks of captain's practices, maybe he's there for week 2 or towards the end of week 1. And I did say, like, if I'm the Bruins, I would want David Pastrnak to make a point to be there day 1 of captain's practices this year. And he did. He was there today. So anyone who was maybe worried that, you know, he wouldn't be, nothing to worry about. He came back and he got back in town a few days ago and said said like, yes, it was important to be there for captain's practices. But also, you know, obviously has a family that lives in Boston now. You know, this is their home. And he said that he might be moving, so he wanted to get that all sorted out. But yeah, I thought that right away, like that was the first thing I was looking for. Like I knew Charlie McAvoy would be there. He's been around most of the summer. Was David Pastrnak going to be there? And he was.
And Scott, just to clarify for listeners, did you say Pastrnak was living in Sweden this offseason? Because listeners might think, he isn't from the Czech Republic, but his wife is Swedish.
He said a month in Czech and then a month in Sweden.
Okay.
Yeah, so they spend time in both countries in the summers, because obviously Pasternak's family is in the Czech Republic. His wife's family is in Sweden. So, and Pastrnak obviously played in Sweden, you know, before getting drafted. So he does have roots there too. So that's like, I don't know, that their third home or second home. But yeah, so
he's there a lot. And he said he also trains there. Like that's where he gets a majority of his off season on ice work. done, and he goes with the Nylanders. So like he's good friends with William Nylander, who I believe was a groomsman in his wedding as well. And I guess his father kind of runs a little I don't even know what you call just skate like drills and
Yeah, like clinic type of thing. Yeah.
So that's he works with the Swedish crew up there. Unless you had anything to finish, Scott,
I'm just laughing at our internal group chat here.
Yeah.
Just know for people watching on YouTube, the side chat that we have going is the exact same thing that you're ready to comment about Bridget's hair. So
I was like, I put my hair in a bow, like it's like a little bow, and I know it's gonna get people, so might as well just touch on it early. And last time I wore anything on my head, people called me Tupac, and so yeah. Anyway, my opening shift has to do with the other person who wore an A last season and who we've talked about in the leadership group. As you know, as we still have no captain for the Bruins heading into the preseason, is Charlie McAvoy, and he obviously spoke on the leadership as well. That was a big topic for all three guys that we talked to after captain's practice. We talked to Pasta, we talked to McAvoy, we talked to Zadorov. And what McAvoy said was basically it's going to be leadership by committee and he said to start, but also for the entirety of the season, probably, and wanting to get more voices in the fold and wanting to do it together. And he said it may have appeared that Chara and Bergeron were kind of the one-man leaders of those past teams, but really it's been by committee the whole time. But my other part to that is McAvoy giving an update on his health and saying that he feels better than he's felt in a long time. He said the past few off seasons he had at least a little something going on that he knew he wasn't 100%, and so he couldn't fully work out parts of his arm, or he couldn't do a full like gym workout, and he just didn't quite feel 100% right. And this time around, he feels like he's a full go at the gym, any exercise he wants to do. He says body feels great. He obviously had a longer off season than everyone because as he was ramping to come back, the Bruins season ended. So he never got to get back on the ice after that injury at Four Nations. So he's had a long off season. Kind of compared it to a college off season because college hockey for a lot of teams ends in March. And then you don't come back until, September, October. So he was very optimistic about where his health stands going into the season, which I think that was one of the main question marks, guys, right? When we've had so many off-season podcasts about what's going to need to go right for them this year for them to make improvements from last year. And one of the main ones is Lindholm and McAvoy being healthy. And McAvoy seems to be, but we did not see Lindholm today. Hampus Lindholm, I should say. Should specify.
Although we're both missing?
Neither of them were there. No, neither of them were there.
So I also want to mention that David Pastrnak also said the same thing that McAvoy said when it came to it may have seemed from the outside in the past that it was Bergeron or Chara or Z, but it's always been a collective effort. So I'm not sure if that's a message that the two of them have discussed with each other beforehand or if that's just organically came out of their mouths separately. But that's interesting. Because those are two players that have been around for that older regime, and we know. And I've mentioned Andrew Ferentz's interview before. He did a podcast with Nesson, but he mentioned Zdeno Chara was such a great leader because he knew how to delegate. So it's known that the best leaders know how to delegate and get everybody included. So now I wanted to talk about the human soundbite, which is Nikita Zadorov, because it didn't take him long to give some good quotes already this season, this unofficial start to the season. And Bridget, I have the video that you pulled up on Twitter, but basically the quote that Zadorov said was, "We are reading what you guys are writing. It doesn't get past this room. Obviously, being underdogs, being a team that no one is putting anywhere close to where we should be, is putting an extra chip on our shoulders for sure." So clearly, Bridget and Scott, the Bruins have been paying attention to what's been talked and read about and written about them in the off season. And I think most of that derives from their lack of offensive depth, probably high-end offensive depth. So I'll ask you guys a few questions because I know Scott's chomping at the bit here as well. He's stewing, and I want to hear what he has to say. But I'll set you guys up. Clearly, the Bruins are using the offseason rhetoric as bulletin board material. So the first question is, can that benefit a team? And B, do you think Zadorov has a point when he thinks people are being premature about how the Bruins will do? Do you think, because I do think a lot of the reason why people are down on the Bruins is because looking at their forward grouping beyond David Pastrnak. But do you think people are underrating the Bruins defense core and goaltending potentially, while not paying enough attention to other teams' defense and goaltending? Are people putting too much weight in a team's offense when talking about preseason predictions?
So I'm first going to push back against even the very premise that, now you might be right, the Bruins might be using it as motivation. I would say what we know is Nikita Zadorov is using it as motivation. I do think sometimes Nikita Zadorov says things where he sounds like he's speaking for the team and might kind of only be speaking for himself. So there's no question in my mind that Nikita Zadorov does pay attention to what people say and write, and I think he absolutely uses that as
Morgan
motivation.
was another one that in the past has mentioned paying attention to what people are saying and using that to, try to prove people wrong.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other guys on the team. I don't think it's everyone. I think there are also guys on that team who could not care less what any of us have to say or write. Obviously not just us, but locally, nationally, just it's all in one ear, out the other, or maybe not even in one ear at all. So
I think that's Pasta. I'm pretty sure Pasta.
yeah, that would be one. Yeah, I don't think he's paying. I don't think he's following any of it. Yeah, there's a few, but your overarching point though is a good one. That look, Zadorov at the very least is aware of it, and I'm sure most of the guys are, that they are people outside that room do not have very high expectations for this team. I even saw a clip where the guys in Spit and Chicklets posed the question, what's more likely, Bruins make the playoffs or finish with the worst record? And a couple of them answered worst record. So like that's how people are, that's the biggest hockey podcast there is.
Who also forgot that they drafted James Higgins because they asked who their prospects were, if they had any good prospects. Okay, well.
Listen, hey, look, some of them are just to focus on the NHL. They're not following college prospects.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but look, it's a good thing. That is how you have to approach it. If you're Zadorov, if you're the Bruins, is fine. If people want to count us out, we're going to go prove them wrong. All I would remind people of is that mindset only gets you so far, because it was also Nikita Zadorov last year, about midway through the year, who said, I see what all you guys are saying, but I didn't sign here to miss the playoffs. Well, again, it was a nice thing to kind of rally around. They still missed the playoffs. So you can say that, you can be defiant, you can have that chip on your shoulder, and that's all good. I have no problem with any of that. Ultimately, of course, it comes down to going out on the ice and proving it.
I believe too that someone tweeted at me after I posted that clip of Zadorov that like the Hockey News, which is, sports, the hockey outlet, obviously, had the Bruins pick to finish last in the Atlantic. So that's not just,
I mean, they finished last in the Atlantic last year. So it's like that you can't think that that's all that crazy.
So that maybe is something that he saw or something similar. But yeah, he's the kind of person who definitely takes that bulletin board material and he plays like that too. You can just watch what he does on the ice, and even if he's probably got no reason to be mad at someone, he can find a way and use it to fuel himself. I don't know, guys, is it worth quickly going through who was there, who wasn't there, because I think that's kind of a good place to start as well. Oh, that's even a better one, Brian. Is that you? That just Scott McLaughlin, Prupak. That's pretty good.
Yeah, Prupak is good.
That's
Yeah.
actually really good. I can't believe
that's the way to go.
that's the one. Nailed it. All right, so I just want to go through quickly who was and wasn't there.
I gotta say though, the Jonas Brothers shirt like really kind of throws that off.
Yeah, it does.
A bow, guys. This is a bow. But anyway, I'm gonna pull up my notes from today. So both goalies were there. Korpisalo and Swayman there from day one, which that's a storyline, right? Swayman wasn't there at all last year until.
Well, he was for captain's practice.
So I should say a huge story in the preseason last year was Swayman wasn't there for training camp. He had gotten some work in at BU and was able to go to captain's practice while still holding out for his contract. But this whole preseason, he's going to be available. He's going to be there. Will that change how his season starts and how his season goes? That's obviously an ongoing storyline that we'll follow. So him and Korpisalo were both there. For the defense, it was Peak, Zadorov, McAvoy, Yoki Haru, and Callahan. No Hampus Lindholm, no Mason Lohrei. And then top six forwards that were there, Geeky, Zaka, Pastrnak, and Arvidsson, who we got our first look at. No Elias Lindholm, no Casey Middlestat. Bottom six guys / bubble guys, I'll call it. Your guy Kuzi, Kuznetsov was there. Beecher, Mitten, Merkelov. No Corrali, no Kastelik, no Janot, no Isamont, no Patra, and no Lysell. So those were kind of the bigger names that you might have expected to be there. And then some of the Providence guys were there. Ty Gallagher, Brett Harrison, Riley Duran, Riley Tufte, Joey Abbott, and we believe that the mystery man without the number was Steve's.
He was there. John Farinacci, I don't know if you mentioned him. Jake Schmaltz was another one.
Was Blue Mel there?
So
or Losh Mellis?
I don't think Losh Mellis was there. Blue Mel, I didn't see him. There's two more players that we just didn't, or at least I wasn't able to identify because they didn't have numbers, and we were too far back for me to try facial recognition. I don't really know exactly what they look like anyways.
I did steal some binoculars from Jim McBride of the Globe for a little bit, but I'm like, some of them were not like guys that we've seen in person before.
So like, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I cannot say either way if Mate Blumel may have been one of the mystery men. I didn't see him in the locker room after that, so I still haven't seen him.
Yeah, and Pastrnak, when he was asked about him, didn't mention that he was there, but who knows?
Okay, so I mean, I guess the natural follow-up to that list is of the guys who weren't there, should they have been there, right? I mean, especially the guys that don't have roster spots technically to that they're stuff to win a job. Like obviously Sean Corrali, Mark Hass, like they're gonna be there, right? On the team opening night. It's just they are. But Losh Mellis, Blue Mel, if they weren't there, Lysell, Patra, these are guys that are trying to make a team. And of course, this is not the start of training camp today. But again, being there, being around the guys, just getting that skate in, it's not a make or break. It doesn't mean that if they're there today, they're making the team, or that even management cares if they're there. But it's never a bad thing to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I would slightly amend it to say if they're still not there by the end of the first week, I'd question it a little more. I think because Charlie McAvoy did say we have more guys coming in the next few days. I would say like if you miss 1 or 2 days of captain's practices, I cannot sit here and pretend I think that's a big deal because I just don't. I've seen too many guys, veterans and young players alike, who come in, a couple days after it starts, and it just doesn't matter. Like they still have a week and a half to get ready for training camp. That's plenty of time. I would say if you missed like the entire first week and you're getting there a week later than the bulk of the team, I think it'd be fair to start to to question the decision making a little bit, especially if you are one of those bubble guys. You know, if you're Hampus Lindholm and Elias Lindholm and you're still over in Sweden and you're skating with a good group over there, would I like those guys to be back earlier? If I'm the Bruins, yeah, probably. Do I think it's the end of the world if they're not? No. But a more bubble fringe guy, yeah, I kind of think you want to get out there and like start to show yourself.
And I wonder if Lysell's still in Sweden too. I mean,
that would be my guess. I don't know that for sure. And Lashmelis might even be over there. He's another guy who is from Latvia but played in Sweden before he went to UMass. So
yeah, it's not super rare for the European guys to not be at day one. And the next day, Scott, is Thursday, right? We got nothing tomorrow.
Well, so that they're on the ice every day. Only 2 of them are open to media, just today and Thursday.
Okay, so maybe when we go Thursday, we'll get another look, see if there's any changes. Maybe some of those European guys are there. Maybe Poitras there. That was one I was a little bit surprised about. I guess the 2 I was surprised about was Poitras and Middlestat. I kind of thought would be there. Not that it's a huge deal that they weren't, but Merkelov was there. You know, Merkelov was there day one and ready to go. So these are, when we talk about the guys that are on the margins.
Fraser Minton was there.
Fraser Minton was there too. So when you talk about those guys, you think, oh, you know, if I was them, I'd want to be there. And obviously we don't know what's going on in their life. So who knows if there was some prior commitment or what have you. Hopefully they're there by the end of the week. And then it doesn't really matter at all in the long run. Because at the end of the day, it's just one less kind of scrimmage that you miss. That's mostly what the captain's practice was, by the way. It was scrimmage, and then it was 3-on-3 scrimmage, and some drills to start. But
yeah, I was gonna say they did 2 sessions, which I didn't know going in, honestly, and I don't think they've done in the past. I think captain's practices have usually been 1 session, about an hour or 50 minutes. But yeah, they did like 1 whole session of drills. And just skating stuff, and then a break, and then came back and scrimmaged, which is why we are recording our podcast at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 12 o'clock like originally planned. So, but it's not training camp yet, guys. Like, can we tighten it up a little? We don't need 2 hours.
So
that's just me being selfish. They obviously find it useful.
So Bridget rattled off the players who weren't in attendance. So I just naturally asked the question, is that a big deal, right? I don't think it's a big deal either. I'm with you guys on that. But I do want to take this opportunity to kind of set the stage for training camp, because I was talking to you guys before we started recording that there's a lot of Bruins fans out there, the vast majority, who expect and want, but expect Matt Poitras to make this team out of camp. There is no guarantee that he makes a team out of camp. And the reason I say that is because of the situations that all of the bubble players are in. Not all bubble players are created equally. There's a lot of players who are eligible for waivers, which means if they don't make the team out of training camp, the Bruins are at risk of losing them to the waiver wire. There's also some players who are waiver exempt. Matt Poitras is one of them. Fabian Lysell is another one. Lashmelis is another one. I believe Minton is another one as well. So I'm not sitting here saying that Matt Poitras won't make the team out of training camp. What I'm saying is, if he doesn't have a lights out, head and shoulders above the rest training camp, the Bruins are going to look around at their potential roster candidates and say, all right, we just traded for Marat Husnudinov last March. Are we willing to put him on waivers and lose him before we get a chance to see him in an extended role? Okay. We just signed Matej Blumel in the offseason during free agency. Are we going to potentially lose him to waivers before he even gets a chance to dress for the Bruins? Right? That the same could be said about John Beecher. He has to clear waivers. Merkulov has to clear waivers. Easymont would have to clear waivers. I mean, there's a lot of players that have to clear waivers that the Bruins would probably lose. So where I'm going with this is if, say, Matt Poitras or Dan Schmelis or Fabian Lysell have good but not great camps where they're kind of on par with everybody else, if you're the Bruins, well, you know that you can send them down to Providence without losing them, even if it's for a month, just to give some of the other guys who are not waivers exempt a bit of a trial, right? Like a month trial. So I just wanted to introduce this dynamic heading into camp so that listeners, if you're watching some reports from training camp and you're like, how the hell does Matt Poitras not make this team, even if he just has a good camp? Well, because it's about player management. Now, you can say to me, Brian, I don't give a shit that they signed Matej Blumel in the offseason. And that's totally fair. I'm just saying the Bruins did do that. So I'm trying to put myself in their minds of like, are we going to risk losing somebody when we just signed him before giving him a chance? So yes, Blumel should have a great camp if he wants to make the team. But if he has a good camp and Poitras has a good camp, I think they would probably try to be responsible with their assets right now. With that said, if a waivers exempt player has an incredible camp, they should make the team. No questions asked. You do what you have to do to make room for them. I just wanted to bring up this dynamic before training camp begins.
Yeah, it's totally fair. It's like one extra hurdle or maybe like half a hurdle that the waivers exempt players have to clear. Because if it's close, yeah, they're going to defer. They're going to defer to maintaining organizational depth. And that means keeping the guy that they would have to expose to waivers, sending down to Providence the guy who doesn't have to go on waivers. So, yeah, if one player vastly outperforms the other, then they're just going to keep that player. But yeah, you're right. It's at least a tiebreaker and maybe even slightly more than that. But yeah, it's not like we've never seen players who require waivers, make the team. I mean, Poitras did it last year in a year where the year before was a little unique because AHL was not an option, but last year it was, and he still made the team out of camp. We saw Johnny Beecher make the team when he could still go on waivers. Mason Lohrei, like we've seen examples of players who have made it, and then we've seen other instances where you go, feels like that might have been a factor there because they deferred to whether it was the veteran or one of these, like to use Blumel or Alex Steves, one of these kind of fringe, AHL, NHL, quadruple A type of players that they keep around because they want to give a little bit of a longer look. Like Riley Tufte maybe falls into that boat from last year where, I think we talked in here, like, I think Bridget had him making the team. I was like, I don't think I really see it. But they obviously saw enough that they wanted to keep him around. They didn't want to expose him to waivers. So they gave him a little bit of a longer look. So it can even be that too, where it's like the guy that they don't want to expose to waivers gets 10 games, 15 games, and then you reevaluate. And maybe you make a decision then and say, yeah, you know what? He's not cutting it. We'll put him on waivers now.
Yeah, it just allows you the opportunity to see if you made a smart, worthwhile investment. And I would say the difference this year compared to last is I do think that waivers eligible prospects, players that will be at Bruins training camp this year, I do think that it's highly likely that on an individual basis, just about all of them would probably get picked up. Like I think Matej Blumel was, yeah, he's a 25-year-old player who has done virtually nothing at the NHL level, but he was second in the AHL in scoring last year. I do think teams would take that flyer on him to get him into their organization. Marat Husnudinov has some young NHL experience, but some good promise. I think you might see those players get taken off the waiver wire, probably more so than maybe Riley Tufte would had that same thing happen last year.
Yeah, maybe. I would just caution against that a little bit because every year, way fewer players get claimed than you think, just because everyone is cutting players at the same time. And any player you claim off waivers, that means one additional cut you have to make because a waiver claim has to be on your NHL roster. You can't claim a guy and then send him to the AHL. They would just go right back on waivers. So yes, it's possible, like a Blumel or Merkulov or whoever, like it's possible they would get claimed, but I would also just say like generally there's fewer claims than you anticipate just because everyone's trying to trim their roster, not add to it on that cut down day.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
good clarifying. Yeah,
I just think that the preseason, early season is going to be of a lot of interest. I actually really already saw a lot of interactions with what I was posting today on Twitter, and like it feels like the appetite to consume this information is already high. I think people miss hockey. I think people were happy to hear clips out of the locker room and to hear, who's on the ice, and excited to see what's next, right? Because after this past season, I think people were happy that one was over, and it wasn't the prettiest finish, and people are ready to see what changes. And there's going to be a lot of things to track early in the season. Whether or not they name a captain is one that obviously is very in your face at captain's practice when there's no captain running captain's practice. And even McAvoy and Pastrnak kind of just were one of the guys. Everybody seemed to be on an even playing field. Obviously, they wore the A's last year. They might be wearing A's again this year and just not naming a captain. So trying to just get little hints here and there if it seems like someone's getting a C or not is an interesting story to follow already at this point. Checking in on people's health. Hearing McAvoy say he's healthy. Next guy that I'd really want to talk to is Hampus Lindholm whenever he gets here. Just seeing where guys stand to head into the season. And yeah, the goaltending situation. I mean, there's plenty of things that we can talk about and that are already on people's minds. And especially if they have a favorite prospect that they're like, okay, I'm watching this guy right now because I want to see if Poitras makes the team, or I want to see if Lysell makes the team. So I don't know. I'm excited. This is day one of hockey season, really. For me, I'll consider this to be like day one of the new year because it's day one of captain's practice. Obviously, Scott and I have been at different events during the summer draft and what have you, but this feels like it's like a natural starting point.
Yeah, that stuff all feels like that's like truly off season, and this like September 1, in this case September 2nd, is like true like start of the season. It's like now you're actually ramping up. Like I posted a Bruins notebook on weei.com last week, and it was like last week of August. It's like it just hits you that like that really is the dead month on the hockey calendar. And then September is when you really start to ramp up. It's like, other than the year that Bergeron and Krejci both came back in August while I was in Scotland and abandoned you guys.
Yeah,
like,
and I was writing everything up like, Scott, they're coming back.
It's like nothing happens in August.
Except for when you're hanging out with Paddington Bear in England or wherever the hell you were.
I was in Edinburgh that day.
Yeah, so I just remember like texting him being like, okay, all right, Bergeron's back. And then like looking on his Instagram and he's sitting next to Paddington Bear at a train station somewhere. I'm like, this guy.
Did you notice anybody in particular taking charge today at captain's practice when it came to directing lines or like where to set up for drills or anything like that?
No, it seemed like that must have all been sorted ahead of time. Like they probably just had a plan in the room and then went out. So there were a couple coaches out there. They're not Bruins coaches because they can't be out there for it. But yeah, they're like a couple huddles just to get together to go over drills like during the first half of it. But no, Bridget's right though. It was like Pastrnak and McAvoy. It was more, yeah, like it was like they were just like among the guys. Like they were near the front for all the drills, obviously, but there were no like group huddles where they're directing traffic or anything like that.
Yeah, the closer and closer we get to the season, the more I would be surprised if the Bruins entered the year with a named captain. I just think it's going to be, let's give Charlie and David both an equal opportunity to see which one just makes the most sense going forward long term as that guy. But that's my read on it right now, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think again, this team is in a situation where they're trying to reestablish their identity, their culture, and I think that's why you saw a lot of the guys you saw them bring in the offseason, which is a lot of bottom six options, which ironically leads us into the discussion we were having a few minutes ago with there's going to be a lot of that was the other difference between last year's camp and what I think is going to be a camp this year, where last year you had Max Jones, you had Riley Tufte. The big question was who's going to win that second line right wing spot? Maybe Merkulov or Lysell. But this year it's again you have Poitras, you have Lashmelis, you have Minton, you have Husnudinov, Steves, Blumel. I mean the list goes on. There's a lot of internal competition, and so when we talk about the waiver exempt players versus the waiver eligible players earlier, the other natural question is, well, then why do they bring in so many guys that could potentially limit or hinder Poitras from making the team right away or Lysell? And I think the answer out of Scott's mouth would be, well, since when has internal competition been a bad thing, right? And so at the end of the day, like I do think it's just whoever deserves to make the team should make the team. And that does mean probably having a much better camp than the guy next to you. And so if the Bruins are in a situation where Poitras or Lysell don't make the team right out of camp, okay, that's fine. Work your ass off in Providence. Maybe Blumel or Husnudinov or somebody like that, AC Mont, don't take advantage of their opportunities early in the season. And the Bruins say, all right, we gave you a chance. Now it's time to go, potentially. And we're going to bring up Poitras or Lysell. So nothing, if there's one thing we know about hockey and training camp is that nothing in September, October lasts forever. Things are always changing throughout the year for different reasons. So, but it is interesting to see when all chips are on the table and everybody has that equal opportunity out the gate, who rises to the top and who gets that initial opportunity. It's going to be fascinating to follow, to Bridget's point.
Yeah, and it's like one of the questions. I mean, we sit up there with other media members and we watch practice, and like we haven't had a chance to talk about all this stuff in a while either. So we're sitting up there and conversations going. It's like, is this going to be Lysell's year? It's like, it's just all these little side conversations about like where things stand. And I do think of the players who are going to be,
we talk about all the light poles Bridget's crashed her car into.
not light poles, concrete parking garage poles. Okay?
Almost Marchands. How many Martians have we almost hit over the years?
Pastrnak, and I almost hit a Marchand once.
How many NHL superstars have you almost hit over the years?
3. So, well,
you almost hit Kuzi? You almost hit Kuzi?
I will say if you count Jake DeBrusk, that was the third one. But
if you see Bridget driving, just give her plenty of space. Just back up.
The thing is, I'm a good driver until I get into a parking garage. Something about parking garages, because by the way, both of those were in.
You have to slow down in the parking garage.
Not the way I see it.
When she can locate her car, she's a good driver outside of parking garages.
Yeah, parking has really not been good for me. I mean, he's referring to me losing my car, which I think we talked about on another episode, thinking it got towed after the draft and not being able to find it at 1 a.m. Walking down the streets of Boston, but I just parked it on another street. So, which did get brought up today. Of course it did. But those are the storylines we all care about. How many poles will I hit in the TD Garden parking garage this year?
Over under 2.5.
I'm hoping under.
In my 5 years, or this is gonna be my 6th year. In my 5 years so far, I've hit a pole in there twice. And I've hit one in the old office building's parking lot. I hit one in the northeastern garage, which I think is getting knocked down as soon as they approve the construction of a new rink there and knock down Matthews, which I'm sad to see Matthews go, but that parking garage is one of the worst parking garages ever.
Yeah, well, the integrity of it was compromised after you took out the support hole.
That's why they gotta knock it down. I knocked it.
You're like, well, this isn't safe anymore. Huge chunk of this concrete pole's missing.
Yeah, well, anyway, look out for me in parking garages. If you're going to TD Garden, watch out. Oh, I almost hit Razor. Going in the parking garage. It was like, I'm pretty sure it was like a Saturday game too, and I saw him Sunday morning, and I was like, that was a close one.
Unbelievable, Bridget. People got to stay clear of you when you're on the road, I guess. Oh,
No,
boy.
road's fine.
Just the parking garage.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott, do you have any follow-up? What were we talking about before
I have no idea where we even were.
I started this by saying we're having sad conversations, and one of them is it Fabian Lysell?
Oh,
here?
yes.
And like, is Minten gonna take over and like take a spot, and just different things like that. I feel like Lysell was a huge storyline last preseason, and mostly for the fact that we thought, and others, not just the three of us, thought that maybe he deserved a little bit more of a look. And this year, I don't know if we're going to be talking about the same thing, because does he deserve a look? Yes. I mean, he's a first round draft pick, but I feel like maybe we're more going to be talking about, should Poitras be getting the look? Should Minten be getting the look?
Yeah,
like,
I was going to say, like,
just the Lysell aspect.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, doesn't it feel like Lysell's kind of been pushed down in terms of both interest, importance, just organizational hierarchy? Like, yeah, Poitras and Minten, I think, absolutely are ahead of him now. And obviously there's more guys even on the way after that, with your Hagens and Zellers. And, like we talked about Corey Proman's ranking of their system over at The Athletic. And like, we had some issues with it, but he had Fabian Lysell down at 8th among Bruins prospects, which is a testament to the way they've been able to replenish the top of it and bring in kind of more guys to push him down, but also his own play, creating a situation where he could drop down like that.
I mean, I think Minten is more so, like I said before, I think third line center is his job to lose heading into camp. That doesn't mean that somebody else can't take that spot, and then he also just slides over to the wing. So for that reason, I'll keep him in the conversation for right wing, just for this argument. But Minten, Poitras, and Lashmelis, all three of them. And I know Lashmelis' name doesn't get talked about a ton, and I know there's a lack of pro exposure that we've seen him in. But if we're
becoming like your new guy, it's like Kuzi and Lashmelis.
Well, if we're talking about him versus Lysell, from what I've seen of Lashmelis, I think he has a more polished, mature game, and I think he has a game that can translate to pro hockey. I really do. So, and I think that list you guys are talking about had him 3rd or 4th.
Yeah,
on the same list that Lysell was 8th. So it's not just me that's realizing it, but like Lysell has he has to leapfrog all of those guys, because the reality is, and this goes for all of these guys, but David Pastrnak is your top line right wing. He is the best right wing in the world, right there next to Nikita Kucherov. And these players also are not going to be a 4th line right wing, because it's not their style of play. So stylistically, you're talking 2nd and 3rd line right wing, and they just acquired the last year of Arvidsson's deal. Now, Victor Arvidsson being a lock at 2nd line right wing, right now, people have him there just because of the uncertainty of how training camp goes. But it is not out of the question that he starts the year at 3rd line right wing if one of these players just really lights the world on fire. Because don't forget, Arvidsson played a lot of 4th line minutes the last couple of years. So, he's flowed up and down the lineup at times, but he's not a bona fide top 6 forward right now. But yeah, Lysell has to compete with all these guys.
Yeah, and when we were talking about, Brian, when you brought up earlier, like just the number of bodies that they have and kind of how wide open some of these jobs and roster spots seem to be, I thought it was notable that David Pastrnak, while we were talking to him after practice on Tuesday, said, we know last year was unacceptable for this organization, and training camp is going to be hard. He said, we know that. And obviously he's talking about the entire season was unacceptable, but the comment about training camp being hard, I think, is also a direct response to what training camp was, or more accurately was not, last year. because it seems like it wasn't all that hard. Like they really weren't going that hard. After a few days, it kind of turned into like, let's just try to get to the start of the regular season healthy. And I think some battle level and compete level kind of dropped in the process. But part of that was also, as you laid out, it was like there seemed to only be maybe one or two spots that were like truly up for grabs. And maybe there were too many guys just kind of knowing that their spot was safe. And, so, hey, why am I going to go out for training camp when I'm on this team? I know which line I'm on, and that's not going to change. Well, now when yes, you would love to have a better, more solidified roster right about now. Like, you'd love it if you were like, oh, yeah, we know we have 9 bona fide top 9 forwards and like we're all set. Well, you don't, but a silver lining in that is with all that competition for jobs, you should have a better training camp, because anyone who doesn't rise up and have a better training camp just isn't going to make the team. Like, they're going to be one of the easy cuts that's going to be gone well before the final round of cuts.
If Fabian Lysell has the same type of camp he has last year, or even a little bit better than that, he's not making the team. This is going to be a big boy camp. There's no doubt about it. I think that training camp is tricky, right? Because there's a fine line between being very competitive, like you would be in a game, because you don't want guys to get hurt before the year. But that's more so in a situation where Scott's talking about, where you already have 95+% of your lineup heading into the year, like the Bruins have had many years over the last 15 years. But how can you be worried about, oh, I want to make sure the guy next to me is healthy for the year, when you don't even have a spot on the roster? Now, yes, if you're Fabian Lysell or Mikey Easymont and you're going into the corner with David Pastrnak, are you going to low bridge him? No, you'll be the most hated man in Boston. So like, you kind of have to know who you're going up against, but there's a fine line between not playing reckless and pretend like it's a regular season game, but also being competitive enough to win a job from the guy next to you. And I think the Bruins, I think the players that were around last year, I think they're professionals. They have pride, right? And they have egos. And I think theirs are bruised right now from last year. I think that they're itching to try to right some wrongs and change some perceptions people have. And I do think Marco Sturm is going to be a straight shooter. He's going to be intense, and he's going to try to make his mark on the organization. And training camp has been brought up a lot of times since the end of last year. It's been brought up by Bruins management and ownership. It's been brought up by the coaches and the players that last year's training camp was a wreck, and it was disjointed from the start. So I fully anticipate this training camp to be very intense and battle driven, and that's how I see it happening. So if Fabian Lysell isn't up for the challenge, it's going to be very noticeable. So again, it's time to essentially put up or shut up for some of these guys, right? And you got to put your best foot forward here. So again, very fascinating camp we have coming up in a few weeks. And there's some intense guys out there. Zadorov's an intense guy. Tanner Jeannot's an intense guy. Mark Haslick is intense. Like the Bruins it's going to be a good camp. I think it's going to be a good camp.
Yeah, and the whole Sturm thing, I'm glad you brought it up again. We touched on it a little bit, that both McAvoy, actually all 3 guys we talked to today, said that they haven't talked to him about scheme or, the X's and O's and what's changing in terms of, what he wants to do on the ice. They've had conversations with him. Pastrnak said it was mostly just a, hey, congrats on getting the job. Like, we'll see you soon kind of thing. But that's going to be a whole storyline in preseason too, because we're going to see him trying different combinations, and it's going to be like one game, some line will be like, oh, that line really clicked. I wonder if they'll keep them together for the regular season. And it's, oh, what kind of defensive structure? What is the power play personnel? And all of these different things that we just don't really know, because it's still up for grabs, a lot of that. And it's open to change, and maybe a lot of change. We're not sure yet, because we haven't seen him behind the bench. Obviously, captain's practice is player run, so that's not we're not able to gauge that yet, and how he meshes with the leaders on the team, or just the younger guys on the team in general, and how those guys fit into the system. So definitely lots to follow.
Well, his system better not be the 1-3-1, because to bring it back to human quote machine Nikita Zadorov, I asked him, and I tried in like a I think mostly joking manner, but asked him about his comments from a few years back when he was in Vancouver, and after a game against the Kings, he said the Kings don't actually want to play hockey because they played a 1-3-1 at the time, which people tell you is very boring and maybe not real hockey, but if you play it right, it can be very effective defensively. So I brought that up, and I was like, so you're pretty critical of the Kings system once upon a time. Like, what if that's the system Marco Sturm wants to bring? And he was like, well, I don't think we're going to be playing the 1-3-1 if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, immediately. He knew exactly what you were talking about.
So again, like you have just pointing this out, you have Pastrnak and McAvoy saying, we haven't talked systems with Marco Sturm yet, true or not, but I'll take them at their word. And then you have Nikita Zadorov saying, we're not going to play the 1-3-1, which I would also just remind people, because we talked about it on here. I meant to look this up before we started. I think was it on Spit and Chicklets where Marco Sturm talked about the possibility of playing the 1-3-1 and said, like, well, the reason we played it in LA at that time was because it actually helped us like discover our defensive identity and get everyone committed defensively. And it's like, well, we've heard him talk about how the Bruins need to reestablish a defensive identity, and like it's going to start there. And I think when we talked about this earlier this summer, after he said that, I just said, like, I could see him deciding that the 1-3-1 could be the way to do that. If it's like he has a very clear defensive system that requires everyone to buy in, and maybe that's the best way to get this team to play good defense. Just saying, like,
it's not
now you have Zadorov on the record saying we're not doing it. I'm like, I don't know if that's 100% or not. Like, it's going to be pretty awkward if Marco Sturm rolls in there day one of training camp and is like, all right, guys, let's practice the 1-3-1.
And then Zadorov just like,
quits, just like walks away, demands a trade.
Yeah. No, because then he's obviously going to get asked about it again afterwards, and he's, whether he'll be openly critical to it or not, while he's,
he might just punch me, like
But
he's so much bigger than, like, he is so much taller than me, and I was looking today. We're all like around him, and Sophia and I are like similar height, and she's across from me, and he's like over a full foot taller than her, and I was just kind of a funny visual of everyone down here and him being up here.
I've gotten some questions over the summer about Marco Sturm as well, and so it's worth mentioning he's been very available this summer. There's a lot of different interviews he's given for listeners that, if you haven't heard it, Scott mentioned the one on Spit and Chicklets. That was a very good interview. He did another podcast as well, and I don't remember who it was with. I could have sworn, or maybe it was, I thought he did another podcast. I don't know if it was What Chaos or maybe.
I don't think he did that. So he went on Nesson during the Jimmy Fund Radio.
Empty Netters. Was it the Empty Netters?
No,
maybe
he was on 98.5.
He was on 98.5. He was on with the Spit and Chicklets crew. He did a great sit down with Connor Ryan for Boston.com. I thought there was one other one at a Dunks. I thought there was one other forum, but it was more or less the same anyway. So he's had multiple sit downs with multiple on multiple platforms, talking about a lot of common questions that you might have regarding systems and different things. And so if you haven't seen those, just Google those or whatever, and they might come up, because he gives a lot of insight. And yes, he talks about, like, well, I don't know what systems I'll be playing at. I need to see what my final roster is. And this was pre-free agency. So, we're just watching Zadorov on her phone.
All of a sudden, it just started playing. I thought I had it on mute. I was just scrolling Twitter to see if I missed anything, and then all of a sudden.
But to tie Zadorov and Sturm together, he mentioned pre-free agency. It just depends on the team. Well, to Zadorov's comments earlier, I don't think the Bruins post free agency roster kind of probably swayed Marco away from wanting to do the 1-3-1. Although you never do one system all the time, right? You implement different systems, different times, different depending on who's on the ice, who you're playing against, what's the situation in the game. It's never a blanket. We do 1-3-1, 60 minutes every game.
Right. Yeah, like a lot of times it's after, a dump in because it starts as a forechecking strategy, but like if you can get through the neutral zone with possession, then you're not dumping it in. So like forget about it. So and obviously every team wants to get into the zone with possession in a perfect world. But as we know, that's not always going to happen. There are times you're going to have to dump it in and have a forecheck strategy, which the Bruins at times last year did not appear to have because their F1 and F2 would be seemingly on like completely different pages, which but again, like that is one way where like a 1-3-1 could be useful for a younger developing team, less skilled team. It is a system that like everyone should be able to grasp, and if they buy in, execute. But yes, it's not the most exciting to watch, and probably not the most exciting to play. And certainly not the most exciting to go up against because it can be very frustrating because the idea is it's going to force a lot of dump-ins from the opposing team.
I don't know how much I want to write about or talk about the 1-3-1 this season, so I don't know if that's what I don't know who's clicking on that. I don't know.
Well, hey, if it's
like anything I want to be covering at length throughout the season, so we'll see.
I think the Bruins have a lot to fix based off of last year, and they might try to go with what helps them do that in the interim the best when they're still trying to integrate new players and new coaches and stuff like that. And maybe that's the lesser of evils for them to at least start the year more conservative and more bottlenecks.
Yeah, and I will just note that Sturm's Ontario Reign team this past season did not play a 1-3-1. Neither did the Kings. So organizationally, they turned the page on that and played a more aggressive forechecking style. So it's not like that's the only system Marco Sturm has coached in. Like he was in the LA organization for a while, so like that was one part of it. And specifically as while he was an assistant at the NHL level, but like he also did other things with Ontario. So it's not like oh, that's Marco Sturm's system. Like no, he coached it when the Kings wanted to play that way, but he's also coached other systems.
So one more question from you guys before we depart for this episode. I want to kind of tie it back to something I raised briefly earlier, but the comments that Zadorov made about everybody writing the Bruins off and how at least he is noticing that. And it's the innuendo there is that the Bruins have some bulletin board material heading into the year, and that can galvanize a group. I think we've seen that in sports more than enough times. But so I do think what he's saying is true. People are writing, many people, not all, but many people are writing the Bruins off. And the people who aren't writing them off are saying, yeah, they could sneak in if things go well and other teams falter, or they might finish at the bottom. And that's where we actually land. And here's the thing. If you look at the offensive group and just keep it to the Atlantic Division, 8 teams in the division, I said to you guys before we started recording, I think the Bruins have the 7th best or second worst, however you want to put it, forward grouping in the division on paper. And I think Buffalo's behind the Bruins. I love Tage Thompson. They have a couple young good forwards too, but they just don't have a David Pastrnak. And I do think that the Bruins have a couple of pieces around Pastrnak that at least pushes them up to 7th in the Atlantic instead of 8th offensively. So I get it. I see why people are down on the Bruins. But do you think that people are underestimating how well the Bruins might be able to play defensively compared to other teams? For example, the Montreal Canadiens on paper, I love the fact that they have Lane Hudson, Noah Dobson, 2 dynamic offensive defensemen. I like Caden Gooley. I like Mike Matheson on their third D pair, right? I like their defense pairs. But you could see a world where Montreal, while having a great offensive defense group and good young promising forwards, they might maybe struggle to defend, right? Same with the Senators. I think the Senators have to prove it yet again that they can once again defend, despite having some really promising defensemen. So I guess I'm just and Detroit, you have Moritz Seider. Beyond them, I don't think their defense group is all that special, but I do think their forward group is deeper than the Bruins. So do you think that people are looking at the forward groups too much and not the whole picture when it comes to the Bruins?
Possibly, and I would also add goaltending to that equation, because I think Jeremy Swayman has the potential to be a better and perhaps a much better goalie than what any of those teams you mentioned, Detroit, Montreal, Ottawa, Buffalo. Now, he wasn't last year, so that's a question mark. But
Right.
yes, the Bruins could play better defense and get better goaltending
And
than
special
those
teams.
and then special teams becomes so important, because you're right. Like, none of us expect the Bruins to be a high scoring team. So if you can keep things low scoring and close 5-on-5, then special teams becomes so important, right? Like, now, if you have a really good power play and a really good penalty kill, now you're coming out on top, right? Break even 5-on-5, win on special teams. That's a winning formula. But those are all question marks, right? Because last year they did not play good 5-on-5 defense. They did not get very good goaltending, and both of their special teams units were not good. So can they fix all that stuff? Yeah. And I don't even think it's that crazy to look at it and say, well, yeah, all of that can turn around with the new coaching staff and just the start of a new season. But it is a lot. It is a lot to turn around, and you still have to see it.
Right. And so do you think other teams, though, do you think their question marks are getting more benefit of the doubt? Like, for example, again, Montreal. Now, Montreal made the playoffs last year, 91, 92 points. So, like, I guess that's the answer, right? Well, they made the playoffs, so there's a lack of question, right? Same with Ottawa.
Yeah, I just think it's that simple, where it's, you're going to defer to the teams that did it last year and got to the playoffs.
But like a Buffalo, right? Like, defensively, you have Rasmus Dahlin, you have Bowen Byram, Owen Power. Like, I think those guys are great offensive defensemen and also have upside defensively if they can be consistent. And then Michael Kessling is a great addition too. But again, like, do you like Buffalo? I mean, until they do it consistently as a group, like, they have, and I'm sure that they do have questions. But do you think they're getting more of the benefit of the doubt than the Bruins? You mentioned some projections, Scott, have the Sabres making the playoffs this year for the first time since 1890.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw at JFreshHockey on X/Twitter posted he does like point projections for every team every year, and there's always a couple that look kind of crazy, but like, then if he keeps receipts of his model versus like other models and predictions and betting odds, and his always scores out pretty well. So, like, of prediction type models, his is definitely one of the most accurate. And he had the Sabres in the playoffs, I think, with 94 points. His model was also higher on the Bruins than the betting lines. I think we talked on a recent episode that betting outlets had them at like either 79.5 or 80.5 points as an over-under. And I think the JFresh model had the Bruins at 88 points, which, I think I'm a little more skeptical than you guys, but that might sound, more on track with the kind of bounce back that some people are expecting. So,
and that was ahead of teams like Montreal and Ottawa, right?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I forget where. Yeah, I think they're definitely ahead of Montreal and Detroit.
Yeah.
I forget where Ottawa came in.
Maybe Ottawa was ahead of them still.
Yeah.
But if you look at last year's playoff line, and I'm going to say this now on September 2nd, if the Bruins do make the playoffs, I do think it's going to be as a wild card team and probably a second wild card team in a scenario where, once again, the Atlantic has 5 teams and the Metro has 3. I don't see the Bruins finishing 4th in the division, even best case. I think best case they finish 5th and sneak into a wild card spot. But yeah, I mean, like, again, even with the Canadians, like, they're still so young, right? So it's like, how does that group? How can they do it again now that teams know that they're not going to catch anybody by surprise? And Ottawa has to do it again, and Detroit still is going to find that way to get over the hump. Buffalo as well. So, and again, I said to you guys before we started recording, the Bruins are going to lose some games this year because they get outskilled. There's no question about it. But one thing that doesn't get talked about a lot sometimes is NHL regular season hockey can be monotonous for teams. They're on a second of a back-to-back. They played 3 games in 4 nights. And I think the Bruins are going to win some games this year just because they don't want to go into the corners against Tanner Snow and Nikita Zadorov over the course of a game in the middle of December. Teams might just subconsciously not have it that night. And whereas the Bruins know we aren't doing shit unless we play a certain style as consistently as we can. So sometimes will beats skill. And I think that, again, that's not the recipe you want to rely on. But I do think it's a reality of this coming season where the Bruins are going to have to gain some 2 points and take advantage of some regular season hockey and some long schedules for teams and long travel.
Brian, I'm when you said that they're going to finish 5th in the Atlantic at best, I'm just imagining Nikita Zadorov writing that down, putting it up on the bulletin board. He's like, put that right here. Brian D. Felice.
Hey, prove me wrong. I mean, listen, I hope the Bruins do as well as possible, but we have to go off of the roster right now. Again, every year we try to compare rosters, and this team has this ceiling, this team has that floor and whatnot. And then eventually the season starts and certain groups that have high expectations just stumble out of the gates. But the Bruins last year, and there's many other examples. And then there's other teams that aren't thought much of, and they just hit the ground running and they have a good year. And ultimately it's a game played by humans, not, guys on paper before the season. Like, teams suffer injuries. Sometimes players come out of nowhere. Maybe one of these young kids we're talking about with the Bruins, whether it's Blumel that they brought in or one of their internal prospects, maybe somebody has a 30-goal season, 25-goal season. We just don't see it coming. And Victor Arvidsson, who is penciled into a top 6 role, maybe we never even see him in the top 6 and he gets traded at some point and some of the kids just run with it. And then you get Hagens coming up in the spring. Like, it's very difficult to play out a whole season before it starts. But we can only go off of so much right now. And it's tough to look at the Bruins forward grouping and be like, they're going to finish 2nd in the Atlantic. Well, how? Like, the other teams, they could, but it'd be foolish to sit here right now and say, roster for roster, apples for apples, the Bruins would finish 2nd and Toronto's going to finish 6th. That's an irresponsible take. It just is. So take that and put that on the bulletin board, Nikita. I'm all for it. And hey,
I'm gonna start making one behind me. I'm gonna figure out what to do with this wall, and I might just bulletin board material all this whole thing.
Nikita, if you want to hear this as well, just to be fair, I think if the NHL standings were predicated on aesthetically pleasing uniforms, I think the Bruins are a top 5 team all day for the next century. But that's not how it works. So unfortunately, the highest score in golf doesn't work either. So sorry if I offend.
Speaking of golf, Nikita Zadorov also talked about his hole-in-one.
That's awesome.
I don't know if people saw that. The Bruins posted it on social media, but yeah, he said he just started golfing during COVID. So just 5 or 6 years ago, or 5 years ago, I guess, and had a hole-in-one this summer. I think he said it was 182 yards, par 3.
Oh, so it wasn't the mini golf course on Route 1 in Saugus then?
No, I mean, listen, that's where you really got to prove yourself. So
yeah, he had to put
still got another step to go
through the windmill.
Yeah, I mean, it's no Pirates Cove,
right? Unless you get a hole-in-one on the Orange Dinosaur off the Route 1 in Saugus mini golf course, and it ain't that impressive, pal. No, I'm just kidding. That's obviously sick. Hole-in-ones is unbelievable.
Well, I remember Frederick had one last year. I think
Trent Frederick's had 2 now.
Yeah, so keeping up with all the golf talk over. It's always like, how many weddings did you go to? Where did you travel to? What was your golf score? That's what the beginning of this normally is.
Well, you get into the golf talk, and Adam Pellerin is just forget it. He's not coming back. He was all over the golf talk.
You want to know why? Because Adam is a good golfer.
Yeah.
Scott, you golf?
Not well. No, so I only go like a couple times a year, just when like friends get a group together, but not regularly, and certainly not well at all.
We should get around it before the year. You know, people love golf, especially in the summer. My hot take is that the best round of golf you can play is a nice 7:30, 8 o'clock round on a nice crispy fall morning. You got the pullover on, you got the
Oh, yeah.
leaves falling, a nice coffee in hand. Oof. You can't beat
Pumpkin spice.
you cannot beat fall
100%.
ball.
Yeah, you just get like way too sticky in the summer when it's hot out.
Yeah.
It's like you just feel gross by like the 8th hole. So
The only downside to
Visual
fall
I
ball,
don't want.
the only downside to fall ball is the fact that when you're on the greens, you have all the pine needles and all the leaves in the way, and it's not good for your lie. And then if your ball goes into the woods, you gotta find a shovel for all the leaves and find it. But besides that, fall ball
Which
is
is
10 out
where
of 10.
I would be hitting it. So
Well, maybe we'll get a podcast round in. That'd be fun.
we'll go do Top Golf.
Okay. All right, we'll see. All right, so we have captain's practice again on Thursday, correct?
indeed.
And we will join up afterwards to record for that as well on that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then next week we got rookie camp starting. That's on the 10th.
And I
so a
think
week
that's
from
going to be
Wednesday.
streamed. I think that's going to be streamed at least maybe on the Bruins website or something. I thought I saw that.
Yeah, so there's a few days of rookie camp at Warrior, and then they go out to Buffalo for their 2 tournament games and whatever the I don't know, Prospects Challenge or whatever they call that. Usually they play 3 games this year. They're only playing 2, but yeah, I do think those will be streamed somewhere.
And then we have camp. And next thing you know, it's October and we're off and running. So, do you guys have any final takes? All
Nope,
set?
I'm all good.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Prupak. And thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you on Thursday. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.